The little boy said, "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night. The rancher followed her into snow. The snow had come early that year, heavier and colder than anyone could recall. The wind whipped across the open plains like a restless spirit, scattering powdery white over fences, rooftops, and the bare, knotted limbs of the trees. Inside the ranch house, the warmth of the hearth fought a losing battle against the chill that crept into the cracks of the old timber walls. The rancher, Caleb Trask, sat hunched over a wooden table, polishing the steel of his revolver. His hands moved with the steady rhythm of years spent facing danger. But tonight, the familiar ritual offered no comfort. Something in the air felt off, a tautness he couldn't name, a quiet that was too deep, too heavy. A soft, hesitant knock broke the silence. Caleb froze, listening. It was faint, almost swallowed by the howl of the wind, but it carried a weight that immediately sharpened his instincts. Another knock, this one quicker, urgent. Caleb set the revolver down and moved to the door. When he opened it, the sight that met him was small, fragile, and unmistakably desperate. A little boy, no more than 7 or 8, stood in the drifting snow, coat torn at the collar, cheeks red and raw from the cold. His eyes were wide and shimmering with unshed tears, his lower lip trembling as he clutched a worn scarf around his throat. "Sir," the boy whispered, voice quivering, "my mom, she didn't come home last night." Caleb's chest tightened. The words hit him like a bullet. He crouched slightly, leveling his gaze with the boy's. "Tell me everything, son. Start from the beginning." The boy swallowed, shivering. She said she was going to the trading post. Said she'd be back before dark. But she never came. I waited by the door. I waited by the fence. I tried to sleep, but she didn't come. And the wind, it keeps making noises. I think something happened to her." Caleb nodded slowly, absorbing the fear in the boy's voice. Fear was a heavy thing, one he knew all too well. He knelt, resting a firm hand on the boy's shoulder, trying to anchor him against the storm. "Don't worry. We'll find her." The boy's eyes searched Caleb's, looking for proof that the words were true. Caleb gave a small nod, the kind that carried the weight of promise. He rose and stepped back, scanning the horizon. The snow fell in thick sheets now, swirling in ghostly eddies that hid the land in white. Visibility was near nothing. Every footprint, every sign could vanish in minutes under the relentless assault of winter. Caleb fetched a lantern, oil already burning bright, and tucked the boy under his arm. The horse waited outside, harnessed and snorting clouds of frost into the air. The little boy's hands were icy, and Caleb could feel the tremor in his small body. He guided him onto the saddle, then swung himself up, revolver at his side, long coat flapping against the wind. The open plain stretched before them, a vast expanse of white and shadow, and somewhere beyond it lay the mother, lost in danger, waiting. They rode in silence at first, the only sounds a rasp of the horse's breath and the crunch of hoof against frozen earth. Caleb's mind raced with questions. Who could have taken her? Or was it simply the merciless winter that held her in its grip? He knew the land knew its dangers, but tonight it felt sharper, more threatening. Every gust of wind carried whispers of unseen perils. "Do you remember which way she went?" Caleb asked, voice low, cutting to the howl of the storm. The boy nodded, pointing with a frozen hand toward the north. "Past the creek, past the old oak. That's where I saw her last." Caleb followed the direction, eyes scanning for tracks. Snow had already begun to cover them, but the faint impressions were still there, delicate and fleeting. A torn piece of cloth snag on a branch caught his eye. He picked it up, noting the dark red hem. His heart sank slightly. Signs of struggle were subtle but present. He adjusted his grip on the reins, pressing the horse into a steady trot. The boy leaned against him, shivering, clutching his scarf tighter. Caleb kept one hand free, brushing snow from branches and checking the tracks at intervals. The cold bit through layers of clothing, searing his fingers and cheeks, but he didn't falter. Not for a moment. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt suspended in the white void. The wind drove in sideways, and the snow reduced the world to a swirl of gray and white. Caleb's eyes, trained from years of frontier work, caught the faintest sign, a bent fence post, a boot-shaped indentation. He motioned for the boy to dismount when they reached a small rise overlooking a frozen creek. "The trail splits here," Caleb said, pointing. "One path follows the creek. The other disappears into the woods." "Which way did she go?" The boy shook his head, fear evident in every tremor. I think the creek. But she might have gone the other way, too. I don't know." Caleb exhaled, a plume of frost rising from his mouth. Decisions on this land could mean life or death. He knew there was no time to hesitate. He helped the boy down, gathering the reins of the horse. "Stay close to me. Don't wander. We find her together." They followed the creek, its surface frozen but slick, snow draping over the banks in thick layers. The wind shrieked, tugging at Caleb's coat and whipping the boy's hair into his eyes. He could see the fear etched into the small face beside him. It was a fear he recognized, a fear of loss, of the unknown, of a world that seemed suddenly vast and hostile. Every step they took, every footfall, seemed amplified in the silence that fell between gusts of wind. Caleb paused often, scanning, listening. Somewhere in the distance, the faint echo of a human voice, or was it a trick of the wind, made him tense. His hand hovered near his revolver. A broken branch snapped underfoot. The boy flinched, clutching Caleb's sleeve. "It's all right," he said softly. "Just a branch." But the lie didn't feel like comfort even to him. The frontier had a way of making simple noises terrifying. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, the sun was long gone, swallowed by the storm. The trees stood black and skeletal, shadows stretching like claws over the snow. Caleb adjusted the lantern, swinging it slowly to illuminate the path ahead. Every step into the woods brought new hazards. Hidden roots, ice patches, and the ever-present threat of predators. He could feel the boy shivering against him, and his chest tightened. He knew that without food, without warmth, the boy's strength would fade quickly, but retreat was not an option. His gaze swept the ground for footprints, signs, anything that would lead him to the woman who had vanished in the night. Suddenly, a faint cry carried through the trees. Caleb froze, straining to listen. The wind made it difficult to pinpoint the direction, but his instincts told him it was human. He tightened his grip on the boy's hand. "Stay close," he whispered. "We're getting her back." They pressed on, the snow deeper now, making every step a struggle. Caleb's boots sank, the cold biting through his socks, and the boy stumbled at every uneven root or icy patch. He lifted the boy when he faltered, wrapping his coat tighter around the small body. "Almost there," he murmured, though he didn't yet know if they were. Hours of trudging through the storm blurred together. Caleb's mind replayed every decision he had made in the past few days, every moment that had led to this. The quiet tension of the ranch, the boy's pleading eyes, the mother's absence. There was a weight to responsibility here, one that he could not shirk. The frontier had taught him many lessons, and the hardest was this. When someone's life depended on you, hesitation could be fatal. Finally, they reached a small clearing. Footprints appeared, deeper and more erratic, as if whoever had walked here was struggling. Caleb's chest tightened again. Signs of life, signs of danger, and signs of desperation. The snowstorm had buried most of the clues, but enough remained to guide him. He knelt, brushing the snow away from a boot print. Then another, smaller, a woman's. His heart pounded. "We're close," he whispered. The boy clutched his coat, eyes wide and hopeful. Caleb could feel the boy's pulse against his hand, rapid with fear and anticipation. Then came the sound that made his blood run cold. A low, guttural cry carried through the wind, faint but unmistakable. It was human and terrified. Caleb's hand went to his revolver. He scanned the trees, shadows shifting, waiting for the source to reveal itself. "Mom!" the boy called, his voice cracking with hope and fear. "Mom!" The cry came again, louder now and closer. Caleb motioned for the boy to stay low, to stay quiet. "I've got you," he said, voice firm and steady. Just a little further. Every step forward was a battle against snow and wind, every movement a defiance of exhaustion and fear. And then, in a small hollow between two trees, he saw her. The mother huddled, shivering, her face pale and streaked with tears, eyes wide with relief and terror. Caleb dismounted swiftly, rushing to her side, wrapping his coat around her, feeling the fragile heat of life that clung stubbornly against the cold. She looked up at him, her lips trembling. I thought I'd never. You're safe now, Caleb interrupted gently, but firmly. You're coming home. The little boy ran forward, slipping through snowdrifts, arms outstretched. The mother bent, gathering him into her embrace. The wind whipped around them, the storm relentless. But for a moment, in that hollow of white, the terror of the night gave way to something stronger. Hope. Caleb stood back for a moment, catching his breath, eyes scanning the forest for any remaining threats. The footprints told him the danger might not be over, but for now, they had found each other. That was enough. As he helped the mother and son toward the horse, he knew the journey back would test him still. The storm would not relent. The cold would not forgive. But they were together, and in the harshness of the frontier, that was a victory worth every step, every risk, every heartbeat. And in the back of his mind, Caleb made a silent vow. No storm, no wilderness, no danger would ever take them from him again. The wind had shifted, colder now, sharper, slicing through Caleb's coat like a knife. Snow fell in thick sheets, clinging to branches and freezing the ground beneath their boots into treacherous ice. Caleb led the mother and the little boy through the narrow path between the skeletal trees, each step measured and deliberate. The mother's hands were numb, her fingers purple, and her teeth chattered beneath a scarf that had long since lost its warmth. The boy clung to her side, weaving in and out of Caleb's protective shadow, eyes wide with both relief and fear. "Stay close," Caleb said, his voice low, steady, carrying over the howl of the wind. "We move slow, we stay alive." The mother nodded, though the gesture was stiff, almost frozen. Her eyes darted constantly to the trees, every shadow seeming to move with a life of its own. Caleb noticed, his jaw tightening. The wilderness could hide more than cold. It could hide predators, human and otherwise, and he had learned that lesson many times over. They pressed onward, following a faint trail that led away from a hollow. Caleb's eyes flicked constantly, scanning for footprints, disturbances in the snow, anything that might indicate danger. Every now and then he would pause, crouching to examine the ground. The boy mimicked him, small fingers brushing aside powder to reveal indentations in the earth. "See these?" Caleb whispered. "These aren't hers. Someone else was here." The mother stiffened, a shiver running through her, and the boy buried his face in her coat. "Who?" he asked, voice trembling. Caleb did not answer immediately. He studied the prints, noting the depth, the rhythm of the steps, and the way they disappeared into the forest. "I don't know yet," he said finally, "but we'll find out, and we'll be ready." Snow clung to his eyelashes, melting slowly, trickling into the corners of his eyes. The storm made it hard to see more than a few paces ahead, and every sound seemed amplified. The creak of an ice-laden branch, the distant howl of a coyote, the crunch of their own boots in the frozen crust. It was a silence punctuated by fear. Caleb's grip on his revolver tightened beneath his coat. He did not yet know what waited ahead, but he knew the frontier did not forgive mistakes. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost all meaning in the blinding white. The mother's legs grew stiff, and the boy's small steps faltered repeatedly. Caleb lifted him each time, wrapping his strong arms around the child and urging the mother forward. Sweat mixed with snow on his brow, freezing almost instantly. He did not slow. The cold would take weakness, and there was no room for it here. Then came the first sign of real danger. A broken tree limb, snapped in haste, lay across the path. Caleb froze, crouched, listening. There was a sound beneath the snow, a low, deliberate rustle, the kind that set nerves on edge. He motioned for the mother to stay back, positioning himself between her and whatever waited in the white silence. The boy leaned into him, silent but aware. "Don't move," Caleb whispered. His hand hovered over the revolver, fingers brushing the cool steel. A figure emerged from the swirling snow, cloaked in dark garments, face obscured, moving with a cautious, almost predatory gait. Caleb's eyes narrowed. The figure faltered, then lunged, and instinct took over. He fired a warning shot into the air. The sound cracked like thunder, bouncing off the frozen trees. The figure froze, then turned and disappeared back into the storm. What was that? The mother gasped, clutching the boy. Caleb exhaled slowly, his eyes scanning for tracks. Someone who doesn't want us here. But they're gone for now. His jaw tightened. We keep moving. The path grew steeper, rising toward the higher ridges. The snow deepened, making every step an effort. Caleb led the way, breaking through drifts and scanning constantly for hazards. The mother's arms ached from holding the boy, and Caleb could see her struggle against fatigue. He could have offered words of comfort, but there were no words strong enough for this wilderness. Only action mattered now. A faint sound carried through the storm, a whimper, almost lost in the wind. Caleb froze, listening. The boy perked up, small hands clutching Caleb's sleeve. "Mom," he whispered. "Quiet," Caleb said, kneeling to examine the snow. They're barely visible, with impressions of more footprints. Smaller, lighter, but deliberate, leading toward a rocky outcrop. They were faint, almost erased by the drifting snow. But they were there. "They're close," he murmured. They approached the rocks carefully, the snow crunching beneath their boots. Caleb motioned for the mother and boy to stay low. The outcrop provided some shelter, and beneath it, in a narrow crevice, they saw her. The mother was crouched, shivering violently, her eyes wide with recognition and fear. She had a shallow cut across her cheek, the skin raw and bleeding slightly, and her clothing was torn. Caleb rushed to her side, wrapping his coat tightly around her. "We've got you," he said firmly. "You're coming home." She nodded, shivering, and leaned into him for support. The boy ran forward, slipping in the snow, and buried his face into his mother's arms. Caleb helped them both to their feet, scanning the surrounding forest. The snowstorm had masked all other signs of life, but his instincts told him the danger was not fully gone. The journey back would be treacherous. The storm had intensified, and visibility was nearly zero. The mother's strength was failing. The boy was exhausted, and Caleb's own limbs ached from hours of trudging through snow. He adjusted the weight of the mother on his arm and lifted the boy, guiding them carefully toward the path back. Every step was a battle. The snow clung to their boots, each movement exhausting. Caleb's eyes flicked constantly, alert for predators or hidden threats. The forest seemed alive with menace, every shadow a potential danger. A distant growl echoed through the trees, low and menacing, and Caleb tensed, hand brushing his revolver. The mother whispered through chattering teeth, "Do you think they'll come back?" Caleb did not answer immediately. His eyes scanned the snow-covered ground, searching for signs. "We move fast, we keep low, and we stay quiet. They won't catch us if we're smart." He shifted his weight, adjusting the boy's position on his arm. "Can you hold on a little longer?" The boy nodded, burying his face in Caleb's coat, fear mixed with exhaustion in every shallow breath. Caleb tightened his grip, pushing forward. Snow continued to fall in thick sheets, reducing the world to a blur of white. The wind tore at their faces, stinging eyes and cheeks, but he pressed on. They reached the creek again, frozen and slick, and Caleb paused to examine the crossing. Thin ice threatened beneath the weight of three, and the current roared faintly beneath the frozen surface. He tested the first step, listening to the ice creak and groan. Satisfied it would hold, he guided them across slowly, each movement deliberate. Halfway across, a loud crack echoed, the ice shifting beneath their feet. The mother cried out, and Caleb reacted instantly, pulling both her and the boy to firmer footing. The ice groaned, trembling beneath their weight, but held. Caleb exhaled sharply, glancing back toward the forest. Every instinct screamed that they were being watched, that danger lingered. Finally, they reached the other side. Caleb led them up the rise, muscles straining, lungs burning from exertion and cold. They paused atop a small ridge, the wind howling around them. Snow whipped into a blinding frenzy. The mother collapsed to her knees, shivering violently, and Caleb knelt beside her, wrapping her tightly in his coat. "You're safe," he said again, though the words felt fragile in the storm. "We're getting home." The boy crawled into her arms, face pressed against her shoulder. Tears mingled with snow on his cheeks. I thought we'd never." He choked on the words. Caleb's gaze swept the horizon. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and the forest behind them remained an unpredictable maze. But for the first time in hours, he allowed himself a measure of hope. They had survived the first night, found her, and the worst of the immediate danger was behind them. Survival now depended on endurance and cunning. He adjusted the lantern, its dim glow casting long shadows across the snow. "We move in short bursts," he instructed, voice firm. "One ridge at a time. Don't stop, don't look back." The mother nodded, shivering, leaning on him for support. The boy gripped her coat, silent now, exhausted but trusting. Caleb felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders, but also a strange warmth, gratitude for the lives he could still protect. The frontier demanded vigilance, but also offered redemption, if one was willing to fight for it. As they descended the ridge, Caleb's eyes caught movement in the periphery, a flicker of shadow, too fleeting to identify. He tensed, revolver ready, but the snow swallowed it before any threat could materialize. Still, he did not relax. The forest was deceptive, the storm a perfect cover for those who might wish them harm. Hours of trudging followed, each step a battle against fatigue, cold, and fear. Caleb kept them moving, guiding them through the storm, his every decision calculated to maximize safety. They encountered hidden obstacles, fallen branches, slippery rocks, patches of thin ice. But with each challenge, Caleb's skill and experience kept them upright and moving forward. Finally, just as exhaustion threatened to overcome them all, a faint glimmer appeared in the distance. The dim, familiar lights of the ranch house, blurred by snow and wind. The mother gasped. The boys squealed with relief, and Caleb felt a surge of triumph. They were not out of danger yet, but the end of the immediate nightmare was in sight. He guided them carefully down the final slope, boots crunching in the frozen crust, muscles screaming. When they finally reached the ranch fence, the boys stumbled forward, arms outstretched, and the mother caught him. Caleb watched them, chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon one last time. The storm had tested them, but they had endured. The night was far from over, the wind still howling. But for a moment, the three of them stood together, united against the cold and the darkness. Caleb knew the journey ahead, back inside the warmth of the house, tending to wounds and confronting the unknown threats, which still demand everything from them. But they had survived the forest, the snow, and the first real confrontation with danger. He allowed himself a fleeting smile, a small acknowledgement of victory. "Let's get inside," he said, voice steady. "You're safe now, for the night at least." And though the storm raged on and the night remained long and unforgiving, the bond forged in the snow, the trust, the resilience, the shared fight, would carry them through what remained. Caleb led them forward, footprints following footprints, toward the uncertain warmth of the ranch house, each step a testament to survival and the stubborn hope that, even in the heart of the frontier, there could be rescue, protection, and home. The ranch house lights shimmered through a blizzard, dim and wavering, but they were a beacon of life against the white void. Caleb adjusted the lantern, balancing it in one hand while the other gripped the mother's arm. The boy clung to her coat, shivering violently, his small fingers frostbitten from hours in the storm. The wind tore at them, threatening to push them back into the frozen expanse. But Caleb's resolve was iron. One step, then another, forward, always forward. "Almost there," he said, voice steady but low. "Just a little further." The mother nodded, teeth chattering. She leaned heavily against him, and every step he took reminded him of the fragility of life in this land. Hours in the snow could kill. One misstep, one slip, and the cold would claim them. Caleb felt the weight of responsibility press down, heavier than any snowdrift, heavier than the rifle at his side. He could not fail them. A sudden crack echoed through the blizzard. Ice, maybe a branch snapping, maybe something more sinister. Caleb's hand went to his revolver. The boy flinched, burying his face into his mother's coat. "It's all right," Caleb whispered, though his own heart hammered. He scanned the trees, every shadow now a potential threat, every movement amplified by fear. They pressed on, the ridge steep and treacherous. Snow clung to his boots, slowing every step, and his breath came in ragged bursts that froze almost instantly in the air. The mother's legs trembled beneath her, and he adjusted his hold on her arm, steadying her. "Lean on me," he instructed, voice calm, commanding. "We're almost home." Then came the sound of pursuit, a faint, deliberate crunching behind them, partially masked by the wind. Caleb froze, instinct flaring. His head turned sharply, searching. The storm had been a cover for whoever had followed her, whoever had set this peril in motion. The footprints were faint at first, but they were there. Another set, heavier, more purposeful, moving fast. Someone wanted them to die in the snow. "Stay behind me," he said, urgency sharp in his tone. "Move fast, but keep low." The mother nodded, gripping his coat as they descended the ridge, each step a battle against exhaustion and the icy crust beneath their boots. The boys stumbled, and Caleb caught him mid-fall, carrying him for a few steps before gently setting him down. "Almost there," he reassured the child. "Almost there." The dark figure emerged from the trees, sudden and silent. A man, cloaked in heavy furs, eyes glinting with malice. The wind whipped at him, but he advanced steadily, purpose clear. Caleb's revolver came up in a smooth motion. "Stop right there," he barked. The figure froze for a heartbeat, then lunged, a knife flashing in the dim lantern light. Caleb fired, the sound cracking through the storm. The man grunted, stumbling but not stopped, and the second shot rang out. Snow sprayed around the impact. But the figure was still coming. Caleb cursed under his breath, hand steady on the revolver, mind calculating each move. "Run!" Caleb shouted, grabbing the mother and boy and pushing them toward the relative safety of the ranch fence. The storm roared, snow biting their faces, but he did not falter. The figure stumbled after them, anger and frustration clear, but the white expanse was treacherous underfoot. One misstep, one slip on hidden ice, and it could be over. They reached the fence, and Caleb vaulted over, landing hard but unbroken. The mother collapsed against him for a moment, breath ragged. The boy clutched her tightly, small body trembling. Caleb kept his eyes on the shadow moving through the storm. It was slowing now, struggling in the drifts. Advantage was theirs if they moved fast. The ranch door was in sight, flickering light through frosted glass. Caleb pushed them forward, hands steady on the door latch. He swung it open and ushered them inside, slamming it shut against the wind and snow. Inside, the warmth hit them like a wave, and the storm's fury became a distant, muffled roar. Caleb bolted the door and moved to the hearth, pulling a chair close to the fire. He helped the mother and boy down, hands steadying trembling limbs. The boy pressed against his mother, shivering, and Caleb set the lantern down, checking the windows for any signs of the intruder. Snow battered the glass, but no shadow emerged. For the moment, they were safe. The mother exhaled shakily, gripping Caleb's sleeve. You saved us," she whispered, tears streaking her frozen cheeks. I thought we'd never make it." Caleb shook his head, voice quiet, almost reflective. "The night isn't over, but we're still breathing. That's what matters." He unbuttoned his coat, revealing layers stiff with frost, and hung it near the fire to dry. "Warm up, eat, regain your strength. We move again at first light, if we have to." The boy looked up at him, wide-eyed, and asked, "Will he come back?" Caleb crouched to meet his gaze, hand resting gently on the child's shoulder. "Maybe, but he won't find us ready. Not if we stick together." The boy nodded, comforted slightly, and curled against his mother. Hours passed in tense quiet. Caleb kept watch by the window, revolver in hand, scanning the storm's fury. Every snap of ice or groan of the house made him tense, but nothing emerged. The mother and boy huddled near the fire, gaining warmth and strength, and slowly, fear gave way to relief. By midnight, the storm had abated slightly, snow falling in softer, lighter sheets. Caleb allowed himself a brief respite, sitting heavily in a chair, hands wrapped around a cup of strong coffee. His mind replayed the day's events. The initial knock, the fear in the boy's eyes, the desperate search through the snow, the confrontation with the intruder. Each memory carried weight, but also a sense of purpose fulfilled. He had protected them. He had led them through death's shadow. The mother approached him quietly, her eyes still wide, still wary. I don't know how to thank you," she said. We would have been lost. Caleb shook his head. No thanks. Just survive. That's all that matters out here. His voice softened, almost reluctantly. You're safe. That's what matters. The boy tugged at her sleeve, curiosity and exhaustion mingling. Mom, can we stay inside tonight? Please. She smiled faintly, brushing a frozen lock of hair from his forehead. Yes, little one. We'll stay inside. The night stretched long, the wind a whisper outside, the warmth of the hearth fighting the chill that lingered in corners. Caleb sat, alert but weary, mind circling the events of the day. The frontier had a way of testing a man, exposing every weakness, forcing choices that could not be undone. He had made it through, guiding the frightened and the vulnerable to safety. But he knew the storm, the land, and the men who might lurk in its shadows would always be waiting. Morning came in pale, diffused light, the storm finally spent. Snow blanketed the ranch and surrounding plains, soft and quiet, masking the scars of the previous night. Caleb moved through the house, checking the mother and boy, ensuring they were fed and warm. Their exhaustion was deep, but their lives were intact, and that alone was a victory. The mother spoke quietly as they ate, voice still trembling. I don't know why he followed me, why he wanted. Her words faltered, lost in the memory of fear. Caleb did not answer immediately. Instead, he studied the footprints outside, faint and partially buried in the fresh snow. He wanted something. Caleb said finally, voice low, thoughtful, but we don't know what. And for now, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here, alive. That's what counts. The boy looked up at him, eyes shining. You saved us. Caleb's jaw tightened. No, he said, you saved yourselves by holding on. I just made sure you had a chance. As the day wore on, the mother and child began to regain warmth, the color returning to their cheeks, the stiffness easing from their limbs. Caleb watched them, a silent guardian, his mind still alert to the possibility of danger. He knew the frontier offered no guarantees. It took life with little warning, and yet it also offered moments of redemption and connection, however fleeting. By afternoon, the storm had cleared entirely, leaving the world silent and bright beneath a heavy white blanket. Caleb led them outside to inspect the perimeter, eyes scanning for any signs of the intruder or other threats. The snow was pristine now, covering tracks, hiding dangers, but the forest loomed darkly beyond the edges of the clearing, a reminder that the wild was patient and unforgiving. He returned the mother and boy to the warmth of the house, hands steady but mind racing. We survived the night, he said, voice firm. But the world out there, it's not forgiving. Always be aware. Always be ready. They nodded, the lesson sinking in despite exhaustion. The boy's small hand reached for Caleb's, a gesture of trust, of gratitude, of something unspoken that words could not capture. Caleb met it, squeezing gently, acknowledging the bond forged in snow, fear, and survival. The sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow-covered ranch. Caleb stood at the door, lantern in hand, eyes sweeping the plains. The storm had passed, but the land remained wild, untamed, and filled with unknown threats. And yet, in that quiet moment, he felt the weight of triumph and connection. He had faced danger, guided the vulnerable through the storm, and delivered them to safety. That was no small victory in a world that demanded resilience at every step. He closed the door, bolted it against the evening wind, and allowed himself a moment to exhale. The mother and boy settled near the hearth, warmth returning to their bodies, fear receding like a tide. Outside, the frontier remained indifferent, vast, and cold. Inside, hope flickered like the fire, small but persistent, a reminder that survival, courage, and connection could endure even in the harshest winters. Caleb leaned against the door frame, eyes distant but steady. The snow lay silent, footprints leading back to the safety of the house, a path carved through danger and fear. He knew more challenges would come, storms, predators, men with dark intent. But for now, they were safe, together, alive, and in that fragile peace, Caleb understood something the frontier had taught him long ago. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to act in spite of it. He had acted, and for the mother and the boy, for the bond they now shared, It had been enough. He watched the sun set over the frozen plains, a pale orange bleeding across the white expanse, and allowed himself a brief, quiet smile. Tonight, the fire would burn, the door would hold, and for a few precious hours, the world outside could rage all it wanted. Inside, life persisted, fragile but unbroken,